A single handful of this plant contains more calcium than a full glass of milk. It grows through the cracks in your driveway right now. And the dairy industry spent 50 years and $500 million making sure you never knew its name. Not because the plant is dangerous, not because the science is wrong, because a weed that provides superior calcium, iron, magnesium, and protein for free cannot be sold. It cannot be patented. It cannot be marketed. It can only be forgotten. And that is exactly what they did. Welcome to USA Grows. The archive opens in ancient Greece, 65 AD. The physician Dioscorides documented stinging nettle as medicine, the same text where he recorded willow bark for pain and fever. Roman soldiers rubbed nettle on their legs in freezing temperatures. Documented military records confirm it kept them warm enough to fight. Not because they were superstitious, because the sting increases blood circulation to the skin, drawing warmth from the core to the extremities. The Romans understood this without blood flow studies. They tested it on their own bodies. And it worked. Medieval European peasants ate nettle soup every single spring. It was the first green food available after winter, bursting with vitamins and minerals after months of preserved meats and dried grains. It kept entire populations alive for centuries. Across the Atlantic, Native American tribes used nettle as a primary food source. The Ojibwe ate it as a spring green. The Haudenosaunee used it as medicine. The Cherokee brewed nettle tea for arthritis. That knowledge was later erased by colonial agricultural policy, which prioritized European crops and dismissed indigenous food systems as primitive. But the plant never stopped growing. It never stopped offering its gifts. It is still growing in your yard right now, waiting for someone to remember. Now let us talk about what is inside that stinging leaf, because this is where the suppression becomes criminal. Nettle has 4 times more calcium than milk per 100 grams. Not per pound. Per gram. Let me repeat that because it sounds impossible. 4 times more calcium than milk. Gram for gram. That means a single cup of cooked nettle contains more absorbable calcium than a full 8-ounce glass of milk. And the calcium in nettle comes packaged with vitamin K, the nutrient that actually directs calcium into your bones instead of letting it float harmlessly in your bloodstream. The dairy industry has spent billions advertising calcium. They have never once mentioned vitamin K. They do not want you to know that calcium without vitamin K may be largely useless. A single cup of nettle tea contains more magnesium than most commercial magnesium supplements. Magnesium deficiency affects nearly 50% of Americans. It is linked to muscle cramps, fatigue, anxiety, and irregular heartbeat. The pharmaceutical industry sells magnesium supplements for $15 to $30 a bottle. Nettle tea costs nothing. Nettle contains more vitamin K per gram than almost any other plant on Earth. Vitamin K is what actually deposits calcium into your bones. The dairy industry never mentions this because milk is not a significant source of vitamin K. You could drink a gallon of milk a day and still have weak bones if your vitamin K is low. But 1 cup of nettle tea covers your vitamin K for the week. The iron in nettle is more bioavailable than iron in spinach. Here is why. Spinach contains oxalates that bind to iron and prevent absorption. Nettle contains vitamin C alongside its iron. The iron and vitamin C combination in nettle is not an accident. It is a delivery system. And the supplement industry sells them separately for a reason. Vitamin C supplements are a multi-billion-dollar market. Iron supplements are another multi-billion-dollar market. Nettle combines them both in a single leaf. No sale, no profit, no middleman. Just a plant that gives you what you need without asking for anything in return. Nettle contains chlorophyll at concentrations that make it one of the most potent blood builders ever studied. In World War I, when iron supplements ran out, medics used nettle to treat anemia in soldiers. They harvested it from fields and roadsides. They brewed it into tea. They watched their patients recover without pharmaceuticals. The clinical records from field hospitals document this. Nettle was not a folk remedy. It was battlefield medicine. The protein profile is equally astonishing. Nettle contains 25 to 30% protein by weight when dried. That is more than most legumes. Lentils have about 25% protein. Chickpeas have about 19%. Nettle matches or exceeds them, and it does so with a complete amino acid profile, containing all 9 essential amino acids that your body cannot produce on its own. Most plant proteins are missing 1 or 2. Nettle is complete. The seeds contain 30 to 40% fatty acids, including omega-3 and omega-6 in a perfect ratio. Flaxseed is praised for omega-3s. Chia seeds are marketed as superfoods. Nettle seeds grow on a weed that you have been pulling out of your garden and throwing away. Now let us calculate the economics, because this is where the suppression becomes undeniable. A nettle patch the size of a single parking space, roughly 10 feet by 20 feet, produces enough leaves to make several $100s worth of calcium supplement equivalents every year. Zero cost, zero inputs, zero labor beyond harvesting. The patch comes back stronger every spring. You do not need to plant it. You do not need to water it. You do not need to fertilize it. Nettle thrives on disturbed soil, on compost heaps, on the edges of gardens where humans have been active. It follows civilization. It has been trying to feed us for thousands of years, and we have been spraying it with poison and calling it a weed, but the medicine goes far beyond nutrition. A 2009 clinical trial published in a peer-reviewed journal showed nettle reduced arthritis pain by 70%. That is comparable to ibuprofen, the most common over-the-counter anti-inflammatory in America. The difference is that ibuprofen causes stomach bleeding, kidney damage, and cardiovascular risk with long-term use. Nettle had 0 side effects in the trial. 0. Not fewer. 0. The sting itself is medicine. A practice called urtication, deliberately stinging arthritic joints with fresh nettle leaves, has clinical trial evidence dating back to Roman times. The stinging hairs inject histamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine into the skin. This triggers a local anti-inflammatory response that reduces pain and swelling in the joint beneath. Modern studies have confirmed what Roman soldiers knew 2,000 years ago. Stinging an arthritic knee with nettle works better than doing nothing. It works better than some topical pharmaceuticals. And it costs nothing. Nettle root extract performs identically to pharmaceutical drugs for enlarged prostate. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have confirmed this. Men with benign prostatic hyperplasia who took nettle root extract experienced the same symptom relief as those taking prescription drugs. But you cannot patent a weed. The pharmaceutical industry has no incentive to run multi-million-dollar clinical trials for a plant that grows wild. So the studies exist, but they are buried. The results are published, but they are never mentioned by your doctor. Nettle lowers blood sugar in diabetic patients. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have confirmed this. The mechanism is well understood. Nettle contains compounds that mimic the action of insulin, helping glucose enter cells more effectively. This directly threatens the most profitable pharmaceutical market in America. Diabetes drugs generate billions in annual revenue. If every diabetic started drinking nettle tea, those profits would collapse. Not because the tea cures diabetes, Because it helps manage blood sugar without a prescription, without a copay, and without a monthly refill. Freeze-dried nettle capsules outperformed placebo in randomized controlled trials for hay fever. The plant that causes allergic reactions also cures them. Nettle contains natural antihistamines that block the same receptors as Claritin and Zyrtec. The difference is that Claritin costs $1 a pill and requires a patent. Nettle costs nothing and requires a yard. And nettle has been shown in studies to inhibit the enzyme that converts testosterone to HT, the hormone linked to hair loss and enlarged prostate. Pharmaceutical companies sell DHT blockers for $80 a month. Nettle tea costs nothing. Here is what they did not tell you. Nettle was listed in the United States Pharmacopeia as an official medicine in 1882. The United States Pharmacopeia was the standard reference for approved medicines in America. If a plant was in the USP, doctors prescribed it. Pharmacists stocked it. Insurance covered it. Nettle was official medicine. Then, in 1905, it was removed. Not because new science proved it ineffective, because the pharmaceutical industry was consolidating. Synthetic, patentable drugs were replacing natural, unpatentable botanicals. Nettle was not alone. Plantain, mullein, willowbark, and dozens of other plants were removed from the USP in the same decade. Same pattern, same motive. Remove the competition that cannot be owned. The 1946 School Lunch Act was written with direct dairy lobby input. The dairy industry wanted milk mandatory in every school lunch. They got it. Nettle was never mentioned once, not because it was not nutritious, because it was free. A school district cannot buy nettle from a dairy cooperative. A dairy cooperative cannot donate nettle to win political favors. The plant that could have provided calcium, iron, and vitamin K to millions of malnourished children was excluded from federal nutrition policy because it had no lobbyists. The USDA food pyramid of 1992, proven to have been written with direct input from dairy, grain, and meat industry lobbyists, had no category for wild greens. Nettle did not exist in official American nutrition for an entire generation. Children grew up believing that calcium comes from milk, iron comes from meat, and vegetables come from a can. The plant that proves all three wrong was growing in their backyards, and they were taught to avoid it. The Got Milk campaign cost $500 million. $500 million. It launched the same decade the USDA made dairy mandatory in every school lunch. The global dairy industry is now worth $900 billion annually. Nettle provides superior calcium completely free. That is the only reason you never heard of it. Not because the science is weak, not because the plant is dangerous, because a $900 billion industry cannot compete with a weed. The United States imports $2 billion worth of calcium supplements every year. Every dollar spent is a dollar earned by an industry threatened by a plant that grows for free in your yard. The supplement industry does not want you to know that you can harvest your own calcium. The dairy industry does not want you to know that their product is not the only source. The pharmaceutical industry does not want you to know that nettle treats arthritis, diabetes, hay fever, and prostate enlargement without a prescription. Wartime Britain in the 1940s tells a different story. The Ministry of Food officially promoted nettle as a food crop when vegetables ran out. The government published pamphlets showing citizens how to identify, harvest, and cook nettle. It fed an entire nation during crisis. Not because they were desperate, because they were smart. That same knowledge could feed America today. But homeowners associations across America classify nettle as a noxious weed. You can be legally fined for growing the most calcium-dense plant in your neighborhood. Your HOA will send you a letter demanding you remove the plant that could replace your supplements. That is not gardening enforcement. That is food suppression at the local level. Cooked nettle is completely safe. The sting deactivates instantly with heat or drying. 1 minute in boiling water, and the stinging hairs collapse. The plant becomes tender, mild green, similar to spinach but more nutritious. Yet the fear of the sting has kept millions of Americans from eating the most mineral-dense plant in their neighborhood. The fear is not accidental. It has been cultivated. Every children's book, every nature guide, every gardening show for the last century has warned about stinging nettle. They never mention that the sting disappears when cooked. They never mention that the plant is food. They only mention the danger. Nettle grows in nitrogen-rich soil. Wherever humans have lived and composted, it follows. It is a biological indicator of human habitation. If you find nettle, you know that people have been there, fertilizing the ground, creating the conditions for this superfood to thrive. It has been trying to feed us for thousands of years. You can harvest nettle from the same patch every year for decades. It comes back stronger every spring, requires zero planting, zero watering, zero fertilizer. The roots store energy over winter and explode into growth as soon as the ground thaws. A family that harvests nettle from a single patch never needs to buy calcium, magnesium, iron, or vitamin K again. Not for a month, not for a season, for life. The dairy industry did not ban nettle. They did not need to. They spent $500 million teaching you that calcium comes in a carton. The plant that proves them wrong grew in your yard every single year while you paid $30 a month for supplements. They could not patent it. They could not make it sterile. They could not stop it from coming back every spring. The only thing they successfully deleted was the knowledge. And that is exactly what this channel exists to restore. The next time you see a patch of stinging nettle, do not spray it. Do not pull it. Do not call it a weed. Put on gloves. Harvest the top 4 to 6 inches. Boil the leaves for 1 minute. Drain them. Eat them. Blend them into soup. Dry them for tea. And then ask yourself why no one ever told you that the most nutritious plant in your neighborhood was growing under your feet the whole time. If this story opened something for you, subscribe to USA Grows and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next story opens soon.